right, all you folks that are seeking legal advice, sit back, get your phone out, get ready to call us. This is Law 2020. That's right, brought your way by the BCN law firm. That is Boyette, Cummins, and Nalos. And we are very pleased to have as a very special guest. We have, for the first time on this show, we have Cynthia or Cindy Kreider. Now, many of you have heard Eileen Mezzanette's on the air. You've also heard Wade Boyette, Heath Nalos, Brian Monk, and it's great to have Cynthia with us today, Cindy Kreider. And again, you can join the show, 855-297-9696. Text us at 21232. Or, the way Tim loves it, use that open mic feature on the News 96.5 app. That thing is phenomenal. That way you're not burning up your minutes. You can set the phone down and go about your business here during the noon hour on a Sunday. And we are live today. So go ahead, just open up that News 96.5 app. Go down to where it says open mic. Press the button. You'll see a red button then. Just press that and say, yes, Ms. Kreider, here's a question. I've got this. We don't need your name. And if you text us, we won't give out those last four digits of your phone number. You can stay totally anonymous today. How are you, Cindy?
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Beautiful day out there, isn't it?
Absolutely gorgeous. I'm glad the weather's finally cooling off a little bit.
Finally. What office do you work out of all the offices, Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and the all-new Villages office?
I am very happy to be working out of the Claremont office. My family and I moved to Claremont about 4 years ago, and we work out of the office. It's behind the Outback Steakhouse on 50, so it's a pleasure to be working from that office.
Isn't Claremont neat?
We love it.
It's almost Mayberry, a little bit advanced.
We love it. I was born and raised in Kentucky, so it's kind of nice to be in Florida and still see hills. So it's a pleasure to get to drive around on a hill every now and again because I miss that in some parts of the state. A
lot of people in Florida have no idea that there are hills anywhere. I mean, in Lake County, we do have hills, and we have a lot of pasture land and the USDA zero-down housing.
Beautiful.
It just gets no better than that. And Claremont is building like crazy. The Citrus Tower, for those of you that are new to Florida, before you got here, Citrus used to be the game. And you'd go up in the Citrus Tower, and all you saw for miles were orange trees. Now you see roofs.
It is definitely a growing and expanding area. It's great. It's a great place to be out there right now. But I do think I miss a little bit of the orange groves. I do think I miss a little of them.
I miss them terribly. I still have them around my area, but of Lake County. But let me ask you this. What are the areas you specialize in?
Well, I come from a practice as a generalist. I've been licensed for 15 years, and I am licensed in both Kentucky and Florida. So my original practice was working with my father, whom I love dearly, who passed away earlier this year.
Sorry.
Thank you. And I always said it that if it walked in the door, we did it. From deeds to murder, we did everything that walked in the door. So I've done that. I've also done large corporate law. I did tobacco litigation defense and worked for a tobacco company for a little while. That was a fun time and a fun project. And since I've been working in Florida, I've been concentrating a lot on business law, as well as one of my passions is elder care and elder law and preventing elder abuse and protecting the elderly and helping people to understand what they face as they get towards their end of their life.
I cannot stress enough, as one who has gone the last 3 years from a mother living independently to a mother that needed the nursing home and first the hospital, then the recovery place, then on to private, care, and people don't plan for this. The kids are never brought into the loop. There's no time when you sit down with your parents and say, remember when you had to talk with me when I was 12 about the bird and the bees? Well, let's talk about those later issues after 60. What do you want? How do you want to handle it? And which child in the pecking order is in charge?
Those questions are so critical, and I just don't think enough families face them. I think they fear talking about them, and I understand that. I understand what the trepidation and concern is that you're addressing your mortality. There are a lot of concerns and issues with that bother people, but it's really so much better to talk about it. And what will happen if you don't talk about it, life will happen, and you will have to deal with these questions at some point. And I have had many conversations over the last few weeks with people who had no idea what they were facing. The rising cost of nursing home care is something that is shocking to people when they think that, well, when mom or dad needs help, we'll just go to a home and we'll be able to get the government to help us pay for it. And that's not always the case. And you really have to plan. You have to know what your goals are. You have to know what your parents or loved ones' ideas of what they want for their care are. And some of the most important things are documents that you can put into place now, like powers of attorney, simple things like that are not complicated, that don't require you to, well, they are complicated and important documents, but they don't require a lot from the signatory other than, competence and understanding. But it's a gift that you can give to your family if you are adequately prepared and you give them the opportunity and the ability to care for you when something goes awry.
Do you also suggest that couples, before one or the two of them dies, that they get with the kids and en masse come to your conference room for a few minutes of free consultation and then take it from there, but discuss everything from, okay, if dad dies, do you have a life estate in your home? Are you all homesteaded in? Are you taking advantage of that? How will you take care of the house? And getting involved with a good relationship with Cindy Kreider and the BCN law firm so that you don't get in a situation like some very close friends of mine. Their mother was seeing $2,000 to $3,000 a month go out of her bank account because she was helping this cause and helping that cause and getting that letter that said, do you want so-and-so removed from office? Give us $100 a week. It's ridiculous what happens to our seniors.
Absolutely, I agree. Every family, as for your original question is, should families come in en masse to discuss it? Every family is different. Yeah. Some families have positive relationships and positive working together, so those people can come in together and can discuss it. Not every family gets along. I know in my personal family, my father and his father for a period of time were estranged, and there were some difficulties there. Everything worked out okay in the end, but it was difficult for a while. So there are a lot of client situations. Sometimes I'll advise clients that they don't need to share their estate plans with their children. In some instances, it's better for their children to just find out what's been decided. A lot of times, if it's equal and fair, and it's what they clearly want and they think their children will understand it, there's not necessarily a need to inform everyone of every detail. If there is a concern about contentiousness, though, it can be important to address that. You have to talk to your client, understand what their goals are, and if the best way to accomplish that is to avoid a conflict, then sometimes a conference is the best thing to have. But absolutely, I want spouses to come in together and to talk about their joint goals, because you'll find out a lot of times that perhaps a husband and wife aren't as on the same page as you would expect. And sometimes they can be married for 40 or 50 years and still have entirely different ideas of who's going to get what and what's going to happen. And I think that a failure to plan can be a real crisis for families. Even if you do plan well, there are incidental things that attorneys can discuss with you, such as, have you planned physically for your assets? Do you know what's going to happen so that you don't leave an elderly spouse with massive amounts of property to dispose of? If you have an idea of where you want your beloved Hummel figurine collection to go, it's good to talk about that before you lose the ability to talk about it. And unfortunately, people don't realize how quickly they're going to lose that ability. That it's not like you get a warning from God or the universe that says, in 6 weeks I'm going to give you a massive stroke, so you should probably get your act together. So these things that happen, they take you by surprise, and if you can prepare for them sooner when you have an opportunity, it's better.
And a couple of things that have come up recently on this show and others. Yesterday, there was a caller who called in and said, we children are a little concerned. Dad set up a trust a few years ago, but there's nothing in it. He forgot to put stuff in the trust, and now he doesn't trust anybody.
That can happen. A lot of times there can be something that's called a pour-over trust, which basically encompasses that everything that wasn't put into the trust during my lifetime becomes a part of the trust upon my passing.
Nice.
So a pour-over trust is kind of I'm not going to say it's a catch-all, but sort of captures what you might not have gotten around to in your lifetime. And with revocable trusts, a lot of time people won't put all of their assets into it because they do have the option to move things in and out and around. So it's, some trusts, it's very important to get them funded immediately and to get the assets in them so the trustee can manage them. But in some cases, it's okay to have it also pass at your passing into the trust.
Okay, you have questions of any legal nature. You don't have to use your real name. We welcome you to join the conversation, 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696. Text us at 21232, 21232. Don't forget, the war on terror, the midterm elections, Ebola. Join us for Red, White, and Truth Solutions for America. Sean Hannity, Herman Cain, Brian Kilmeade, Dana Lash, and special guest Ted Cruz, along with Governor Rick Scott. They'll be on the Stages of Life stage October 30th, CFE Arena, brought to you by Sun State Ford and Michelob Ultra. Ticket information, news965.com. Hey, welcome back. Yes, indeed. We're 22 past the hour right here. We got 7 minutes before news, traffic, and weather with veteran newsman Dave Wall. Cindy Kreider is with us. She is in the master chair right here as we ask the experts, and this is Law 2020 featuring the BCN law firm. Lots of great associates over there. Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and a brand new facility on Highway 466 in the heart of the fastest growing community in the world, and that is the Villages. Michelle, thank you for participating. How can we help you?
Hi, I was calling because I have a 15-year-old son who has autism, and at our last school meeting, they suggested that we have power of attorney over him before he turns 18, since he can't really make decisions for himself. They said that once he turned 18, it would be a lot more difficult to get that. And I understand the reasoning behind that. I just don't know how to go about doing it.
Well, that's a great question, and it's very important that you plan when you have a child with intellectual disabilities and special needs. It's very important that you plan short-term and long-term. So, as your child is under 18 at this moment, you still have authority over that child. When that child becomes an adult, unless they are declared legally incompetent, they're going to have the authority to make their own decisions and to appoint their own power of attorney. So it will depend somewhat. A power of attorney that you get over him now will not be effective after he turns 18. So it's important that you do plan, but if he is not legally competent to make a power of attorney now, it is unlikely that he will be legally competent after he turns 18, but his rights will have to be determined judicially to take away his legal rights. There's a presumption that they are entitled to those rights unless they are removed from them. So there are some complicated issues in there that involve both family law and special needs planning. And how does that answer your question?
It does, because it's difficult because he can function. I mean, he's high functioning, but he still needs assistance.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
It's a gray area, and it's easy for him to be taken advantage of. So we want to do the best thing for him.
One of my passions, one of the institutions and charities that I support is Bishop Grady Villas. They're located in St. Cloud, Florida, and they are a group home for intellectually disabled adults and adults with developmental disabilities. And I mention this because there are wonderful services and facilities, not just that facility, but other facilities out there and other experts in this area that can really help give you guidance, especially if you have someone that is high needs and special functioning and high functioning and special needs, that can help you really look at what is in your child's best interest and help you plan for their adulthood and what their additional needs might be as they grow further as an adult and are no longer underneath your legal guardianship or legal care. So I think that there are all sorts of social resources out there available. Have you had the ability to contact, are you working with a social services agency to get you support?
No, not yet, because I'm just scared to look at it. It just I just found out about it, so it's just kind of scary to think that we're at that point that he's going to be, on his own. So I need to put research into it.
Sure. I understand your fear. I absolutely do. It is concerning. It's one of the biggest things that parents with children with disabilities face, is how to best prepare them for the rest of their life and how to have them be taken care of once the parent is no longer there. But it's not as scary as you think. And when there are wonderful agencies all over the state of Florida that are both state funded, and then there's private religious organizations and intermediate organizations that can really help you look at what you're facing, look at what your child's issues are and needs are going to be, and they can help you decide from a legal perspective. They can help give you some guidance so that when you come into our office, we can give you the exact kind of help that you need, because it might be different based upon your child's needs, depend upon their intellectual capabilities, depending upon whether or not they're going to be declared incompetent or whether or not they're going to be competent to handle their own affairs. So there's,
Right.
it would be something we need to talk about your child's specific situation, but it's absolutely a wonderful thing that you're thinking about this now and looking to plan for it. And I'd love to, if you wanted to give us a call, I'd love to talk with you further about it and help get you in touch with some of these support organizations that have experience with this and can help you get turned in the right direction so that we can help you.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much. You can follow up by calling the BCN law firm first thing in the morning, always willing to sit down and give you a few minutes of free legal advice. And you may also want to, talk with them about end-of-life issues, what's going to happen to that 15-year-old should you all pass or become incapacitated. 855-LAW-2020. You hear that, and once you hear that, you want to sing it. It's very catchy. 352-394-2103, 352-394-2103. One of the things that also brings to mind is that Wade likes to bring up. Too many people think that the answer's on the internet, or think that they can run down to the big box office supply store this afternoon. Oh, there's going to be a form for that. I'll just fill out the form and forego the lawyer. And that thing is, one size fits all document, huh?
Absolutely. I actually, that is a terrible problem that we're facing a lot more with these self-help services. And I advocate people becoming educated, but it's different from learning about it on the internet, which can be a valuable resource and tool where you can get an idea of what you're doing, then seeking a professional's advice to get you the actual help that you need, the document that you need, because you can find yourselves in some sticky situations if you fill out these forms. And when we get a chance, I'd love to tell you about a difficult thing that someone did because they went to the big box store, got a form, and got themselves into a terrible mess. And then it cost them a lot more money to have me fix it than it would have in the first place.
I love it when attorneys from the BCN law firm come on the air, because they, without saying names, they often give us some horror stories that we do not want to repeat in our lives, okay? That's why we have the Ask the Expert series each and every Saturday and Sunday right here on News 96.5. Hey, welcome back to the show. It's our good long segment. Your chance to join the conversation. 855-297-9696. You can text us at 21232, or use the all-new open mic feature, and you can ask questions right now of Cindy Kreider. She is one of the attorneys with Boyette, Cummins, and Nalos, the BCN law firm, and the name of the show is Law 2020. During the break, you were telling me that you have a great exercise that you do with clients, and that's called the Wheel of Misfortune. And right before the break, you said we're going to talk about some calamities that happen out there with people trying to do things themselves or not have good representation.
Oh, there's so many. We could do a whole segment on just these things, and they're not funny. They're actually quite tragic, but they're wonderful illustrative examples of what can go wrong. And I've recently had a client who came in who thought that they were being clever, and they went to a big box store and did a quick claim deed, and they deeded over a portion of their property to a family member in the hopes to maximize some sort of perceived tax advantage. It's a fairly complicated situation, but the short version is they actually ended up giving that family member a life estate in the home. So so they didn't realize that that person that they wanted to essentially evict that person, and they were unable to. I had to explain to them, what you gave them, what you signed, they have a life estate. Their entire life, they have this right to this property. Unless you get them to give it up, you can't get them out of the property. I mean, the person is subject to some rules and some lack of waste issues, but, it was just a tragedy because they thought if they had come in first of all, the free consultation, we could have explained it. But with, an hour of an attorney's time or a small amount for a deed, we could have saved them untold amount of heartache and troubles.
All right, we're taking your calls right now. We have one caller calling in right now at 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696. Give us a call back. That one, your line dropped, 855-297-9696. Text us at 21232, 21232. So make sure that you have the BCN Law Firm number down as well, 352-394-2103 or 855-LAW-2020, bcnlawfirm.com, and that's Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and the Villages now. I love having all these offices because it makes it so convenient for everybody.
Anybody, we can get to anyone to help them just about anywhere in Central Florida, and that's really wonderful. And we're very excited about our Villages location. We have a great attorney up there, Melissa Williams, and she's doing a great job and is available for the large population out there that really needs to get some guidance with their affairs, because they are not all an aging population, but there is an aging population up there, and they're facing a lot of challenges, and it's good that we can be there on site to provide assistance.
Well, the one thing that I really like about the idea, when we talked first with Wade Boyette about doing this, I pointed out that one of the great things about your being there now, and you're being in Claremont as well, and the other cities, is Central Florida attracts about 600 new families a month, 500 of which are moving into the Villages.
Yes.
They're from other parts of the country, so they don't know, who do I trust, who do I go to for this, and this. And for legal, well, you're right there with them.
Absolutely.
You're right down the street. So
absolutely. We're convenient, and we're there located easily for people to get to. So I have another thing. I do international investor immigrant visas. It's called an EB-5 thing. So I deal a lot with new people that want to immigrate to the U.S., and we have a large immigrant population, not just of people who are wanting a better life, but people who already have a great life and who have assets, and they need to handle them properly as they try to transfer to this country. So there's a lot of planning that goes into that. It looks like we have a question, though.
Yes, we do. Jill, what is your question, please, for Cindy Kreider of the BCN Law Firm?
Thank you kindly, and appreciate this service. I'm looking for clarification and how there is any possible potential connectivity. A power attorney versus HIPAA. If not, would you clarify what HIPAA actually is and how does one acquire it?
Okay, well, HIPAA is a government regulation, and I believe it stands for the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act, or Health Information Patient Accountability Act. It's an acronym for something. I'm not exactly certain which, but that is something that is a government promulgated regulation that controls people's health information, your private information. There was a period in time before HIPAA came into place where it wasn't exactly clear who could access your medical records, who could share that information, and with whom they could share it. And as the world became more interconnected with the internet and with electronic media, it was a lot of safety issues with people with their Social Security numbers and their private health information just being out in the world, sent on an unsecured line or being sent via a fax to someone who the patient didn't necessarily want them to have that information. So the government got together and instituted this policy, and it regulates physicians, hospitals, and anyone who is required to deal with a patient's private medical information. So that's kind of a general idea of what HIPAA is and who it applies to. Now, a power of attorney is something completely different. A power of attorney is a document that you would execute that gives another person, another individual, the ability to control your legal affairs. There are, in the state of Florida, we only have what's called durable powers of attorney, which means they're effective upon their execution. There was a statute that was executed in 2011 that came out that updated our power of attorney rules. But essentially, if you become incapacitated or immediately upon the execution of this document, this other person can act in your stead in many legal situations. You can make them as broad or as limited as you want them to be. So in the case of spouses, especially elder spouses, I generally recommend that we get very expansive powers of attorney in favor of each other, because you never know when you're going to lose the ability to make your own legal decisions. And these things can be very far-reaching, from who's got the authority to talk to your bank about paying bills, from who can access your safety deposit box, little things like that can be controlled by a power of attorney. And the additional powers of attorney that you can give, which would perhaps be a healthcare surrogate, which would allow someone to make medical decisions on your behalf. So basically, HIPAA and powers of attorney aren't necessarily related to each other. However, you can give someone the authority to make your healthcare decisions under a healthcare surrogate or a healthcare power of attorney, which might also give them the right to access your medical records pursuant to HIPAA guidelines.
Okay. So if you had a power of attorney document implemented correctly, it could cover all that, and there wouldn't be a need to get a separate form and try to find whatever the documents need to be for HIPAA. Did I get that correct?
Well, I think so, but HIPAA isn't something you're going to get from your attorney. HIPAA is something you're going to get from the medical provider. You're going to get it from the doctor's office when you sign in, and your power of attorney may want to give the person, your actual power of attorney, your designated person, the authority to access your records through HIPAA, so that there is no limit on what the person who is doing your power of attorney can access. But you can write the power of attorney to whatever level of access you want to grant it. You could do a limited power of attorney to give someone the ability to sell your home if you were going to be out of the country and needed someone to handle a business matter during a week while you're gone. So you can make it as limited or as broad as you need it to be. But it's not necessarily related to HIPAA, although it might have some impacts on HIPAA. Does that help answer your question?
Clarify in the power of attorney specifically if you want to make it broad. It can't.
Absolutely.
It needn't be limited. You can make it as broad as you want, but it has to list those specifics. Is that correct?
Yes. There is part of the 2011 statute. Florida, they call them superpowers, which I think is kind of a funny way of referencing it, but it makes me smile every time I do it. There is a section of rights that must be specifically enumerated in a power of attorney, and you have to initial each of those rights if you want your power of attorney to be able to exercise them. So if you don't have a power of attorney that has those individual sections initialed, then it's not going to be as effective or as broad as you need it to be. So you need to look at your power of attorney. If it hasn't been updated since 2011, you might ought to call your attorney to see if to look at it and see if it needs to be updated for today's laws for what you want it to do.
I think there's an awful lot of people, Cindy, that have not faced this HIPAA situation. I have in the last 2 years, especially now that I'm under a doctor's care. And as much as my mother was in the hospital, I took her there. I checked her in, and yet I left the hospital, went to work, called back to the hospital, and said, I need to know her state of recovery. And they said, you don't have a pass number? You're not listed on the HIPAA receipt? We can't even tell you if your mother's still here.
Absolutely.
And I said, no, come on. I checked her in. And they said, doesn't matter. It is the law under HIPAA and the Affordable Care Act. They cannot say a word unless you specifically write it down. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. And that's where the healthcare surrogate comes in very handy, because it gives you all of the authority to make decisions and to have access to those records. And a power of attorney can also give you that. But here's one of the problems that comes up with that. When you're talking about your mother going into that situation, if, for example, she's had some sort of a neurological deficit, she may not be competent to execute a document to give you that authority after the fact. And that can become a real problem for people who need that kind of access, because then you might even have to go through a guardianship procedure. You might actually have to go to court to get access to records that your mother would have gladly granted your access to, would have wanted you to handle. But you need these documents in place before they become unable to do them.
And as you said earlier in the show, and I've never heard it put quite that way, life does not set an appointment.
Nope.
And say,
Doesn't.
Here it comes, folks.
Nope.
All right, 1248, we have a text and we have a caller, so thank you for getting involved in the show. I arguably think that Cindy is one of the best we've ever had on in a long time. I enjoy the conversation. I think you all do too. And Jill, we want to thank you for your call, because I think they got a lot of people in Central Florida thinking. All right, we'll be back. This is Law 2020 featuring Cindy Kreider today from the BCN Law Firm. We'll be back. Very good. We've got a great caller on the line, and I'm sorry about your loss, Sarah, but you're on the air right now with Cindy Kreider, attorney at law, and she will put your mind at ease. Go ahead.
Well, I recently lost my father, and I discovered that neither of my parents had put anything in writing in terms of anything, but it was okay because things passed to my mother because she was a spouse. But now that things have kind of settled down and we are kind of putting things back together, what should I be going through? What are the priorities for starting managing my mom's paperwork and getting everything in order? She's young. She's in her late 60s, but obviously we need to plan. Otherwise, nothing will happen for her either.
Well, that's a great question. You'd be surprised how many people face this exact situation, and they'll find themselves really kind of overwhelmed with all the documentation and all the things that may not have been faced. It's particularly difficult when one spouse handled all of the affairs and the other spouse is unaware of what kind of business assets they had, what kind of debt obligations they may have had, and what their payment situations were. So it's a very good thing that you're looking into this now and trying to start preparing for what your mother's going to be facing. I see from the question that there are multiple states involved. That's a very important issue that you need to address because every state has different laws. But wherever your mother is primarily the resident, she needs to have a power of attorney now that there isn't a spouse to be able to do business transactions for her in the event that she becomes ill or incapacitated. She definitely needs a power of attorney in favor of someone that she trusts that can handle and that understands her business affairs. And if there are any other assets, and even if there aren't, she needs her own will. She perhaps needs to update it. It may the facts may have changed since her spouse's death. And I recently went through some of this similarly with my father. He passed away earlier this year. And even though my mother is extremely competent and has a wonderful grasp on everything, it still can be very overwhelming for the family that's left to deal with everything. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And don't forget that Cindy is always willing to give you, as do all the associates at BCN Law Firm, a few minutes of free legal consultation. You might want to just call and get an appointment at 352-394-2103 or 855-LAW-2020. There are offices in Winter Park, Claremont, Lakeland, and a brand new facility on Highway 466 in the Villages. And here's a text that says, how do I avoid deficiency balance on a short sale? Have a bank trying to collect that, and I understand 1099-C, but that's where it ends.
I think I know sort of what they're talking about. A 1099 is what's going to be given. The law has since ended. There was a period of time where if your debt was forgiven on a mortgage, that you would not have to report it as income. Now that has expired, so your for debt that's forgiven under a mortgage negotiation, you're going to have, or through a short sale, you're going to have a 1099-C. You're going to have to report and deal with that income on your income taxes.
Ouch.
Yes. So it's very important that you negotiate this. Ken Costello in our office handles short sales all the time. I've handled several of them myself, but it is critical that you negotiate this short sale and that they do not have the right to recourse to a deficiency judgment, because you may think it's all over. You may think, okay, we've finally gotten rid of this, or even through a foreclosure, you may think that they foreclosed, they have the house, it's finally over. It's been a nightmare, but it's over. And then you get hit with a notice that they're going to pursue you for the deficiency on the original note, and plus interest, plus penalties, plus attorney's fees. And it can be life altering. It can require some people to go into bankruptcy. That may be the only way they defend against it.
And I have heard, Clark Howard brought it up the other day, that there is a new national company that's buying up all this paper from a lot of the banks, and they are highly, highly high pressure, unscrupulous, and downright mean.
I think they're actually called vultures.
Here you go.
Yes, and they are, and I think business doesn't have any obligation to anything other than profit. So, their motive of what they're trying to do, they're taking advantage of laws and contracts that we have gotten into, perhaps not advisedly so. And so, but the people on the other end of these vulture companies really do find themselves in a terrible situation, because a lot of times they didn't understand what they'd be subject to. They did not realize what they'd be facing. So
very quickly, let's go to Enrique on line 12. That's the first for me. I've been here 31 years. I've never had anybody call that line, but that's okay, Enrique. We have less than a minute and a half. Let's use it wisely.
Okay, I'll go real quick. My mom is in a nursing home, and she has Alzheimer's, and the nursing home hired this guardian person, and before that I have a power of attorney over my mom, a durable power of attorney, and this person, my mom has Alzheimer's, and this person got my mom to sign to give them a power of attorney, and this person went into their bank account and started taking out money from their funeral money, that I had set aside for her. And
I think I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I think we're going to have to. Can you give me a call at my office? I'll be happy to help you with this question, because it sounds like your mother's been taken terrible advantage of, and I'd love to help you with that.
And the number you want to call Enrique is 352-394-2103, 352-394-2103. Cindy, thanks for a great, admirable job. I told you it was going to go quick, didn't I?
It did. It was great. Thank you so much.
Come back.
Absolutely. I had a great time.
Thanks, Tim, for hitting all the right buttons.